Hello all, Rick here again with a theory and discussion video. With Picard Season 2 coming out, and John Delancey returning in some capacity as Q, alongside Whoopi Goldberg apparently being on board from all indications, I thought it'd be a fun idea to look into the past that these two clearly have. StarTrek.com mentions that Q and Guinan first met around 2160, and Memory Beta places it at 2165. In this decade, humanity was finishing the Earth-Romulan War and joining in the founding of the Federation, so probably nothing to do with each other. And Guinan would have been around 400-something at this time. Something that is relevant to all of these theories is that the Q are near omnipotent, but not omniscient. They don't know everything at all times, although it would be fair to say that nothing lies beyond their grasp. Q was surprised to see Guinan on the Enterprise D when he first met her, suggesting that he was unaware of her presence until that moment. Once he realises who she is, he is taken aback, warns Picard that she is more than she appears, and equates her to an imp, and takes on to no one. She clearly has an issue with him too, and confesses to having dealings with the Q Continuum before in her past, but she doesn't elaborate. For this video, I will be laying out some theories, both fan ideas and content drawn from extra-canonical stories, to speculate on just why the two share such enmity. This is because there is precious little to go on in the show, which is a deliberate choice on the writer's part to add to Guinan's mystery, so again, there's no actual concrete answer in the show, just speculations fueled by observation. The first two theories are supported by what we see in Generations and the TNG episode Yesterday's Enterprise. Guinan definitely has a sense for what we'll call the Universal Status Quo. She's aware of how things should be, even if she has no memory of them, and can pick up on alterations to the timeline. In the show, this is never explained, but we have two options in Apocrypha. The first is that this is just a trait of the Elorians themselves, that their penchant for listening goes beyond simply hearing others, has a deeper connection to sensing everything, the flow of time, a perception of the universe. Elorians can feel, sense or hear when things are not as they should be, like an instinct, like when your car handle's off but you can't place it. Theory 2 as to the origin of this power comes from the fact that Guinan was exposed to the Nexus energy ribbon, and once there, you always have a part of you trapped there because time has no meaning in it. Part of your essence therefore is always beyond the confines of space-time, giving you a higher insight into the flow of time in the universe, and you can see the wood through the trees, as it were. Either explanation for her heightened connection to the universe can fit with this theory, perhaps a mix of both. But this theory states that any Q can sense this element to her, and it makes them uneasy. Q have control over almost everything and can change reality at a whim, but it could simply be that a part of Guinan's essence lies beyond the sight and purview of the Q Continuum, and Q hates her for it. He has no control over her because she is beyond his ability to manipulate entirely. His intolerance of her is soon reciprocated, and there we go, we have a rivalry based on an intrinsic clashing of cosmic forces. Another theory floating around out there is that she is a Q, or formerly a Q in some capacity. I'm not sure I'd buy that she was a Q wholesale. After all, she has a father that was deeply rooted in Elorian society. But then again, we have seen individuals such as Amanda Rogers, who was born of two Q who are living as humans. She began to manifest Q powers despite being conceived as human, who was brought into the Continuum by Q. Guinan could be one such other individual. Some Q out there had a child with an Elorian and Guinan was the result. However, she denies returning to the Continuum and somehow evades the execution that is the given alternative. This might be the origin of the falling out between her and Q, but this seems a little off considering that she still considers the Continuum itself to be almost decent. Perhaps she gave up her powers, something I bet she'd have regretted once the Borg came for her home. Completely speculative scenario here. Thanks for humouring me, but perhaps she swore never to use her powers until the Borg came, assimilated El Aurea, then she snapped, literally, undid it. So then the Q arrived and forcibly depowered her, restoring the assimilation of the original timeline. Now she's mad at Q, he's annoyed at her, and she has complex feelings now as to the whole thing. I still don't think this one is that likely. If not a depowered Q, then what else? Well, the Q can grant their powers to other people to test them, as Q did with Riker in Hide and Q. Could be that this was done once before with Guinan, yet she went and did something impulsive or against Q's predictions, resulting in her being immediately stripped of that power, but not before it got Q in trouble with the Continuum. This seems a little more likely, a scenario where Guinan goads Q into giving her a modicum of his power against the judgments of the Continuum, only to then, rat him out to the Continuum and get him chastised for it. I could easily see this sort of thing playing out, perhaps an attempt by Guinan to humble the near-omnipotent being, and he is humiliated that it worked. That, to me, plays into their established characteristics too. There's also the idea that the El-Aurians were well on their own way to reaching Q-like levels of evolution of technology, but that the Borg assimilation snapped that away from them. Their level of development may have potentially been a rival for the Q Continuum, so the Q allowed the destruction of their world to prevent that. Possible, but I see an issue with that theory. The Borg would have assimilated El-Aurian tech and biology, so if they were on the cusp of Q-like powers, then the Borg would have them. I guess it's possible that Q removed all traces of advanced El-Aurian stuff from the Borg's path to prevent the Borg from getting their hands on it. This could have left the El-Aurians vulnerable to the Borg, directly resulting in the assimilation of the El-Aurian people, and Guinan is aware of this. This is circumstantially supported by Q chastising Q Jr. for provoking the Borg, suggesting they're a bit of a taboo species for the Continuum, so maybe they are actively working to prevent the Borg from growing too powerful. Of course, there is the simple theory that there is no special thing, no superpower and no cosmic awareness on her part. Perhaps Guinan just pissed him off one day. Q has done plenty of reprehensible acts in his immortal lifespan that she could rightly have taken issue with, and it could be that one time she simply undid some long con or prank he'd been setting up over generations on an unsuspecting populace. If she had foiled his schemes once, he very well could perceive her as an imp, some mischievous sprite of devilish origin, especially to a being that has a history of impersonating a deity. But then why not simply erase her, as Q is wont to do? The answer might simply be because she's El-Aurian. They have incredibly long lifespans that touch many lives across the cosmos, especially as they are a species of listeners who go out of their way to integrate themselves into places where they can learn a good tale or two to share, building a repertoire of experiences to advise others. This sort of life leaves a complex trail through time, especially as El-Aurians live to be well over 700, possibly thousands of years old. Couple this with the canon fact that the Q can perceive through time and understand the repercussions of alterations, perhaps she is simply too important to destroy. She has affected the lives of too many key figures throughout history. Yeeting her from existence would undo all that she did, or will do, and fixing that mess might be impossible, or at the least more trouble than it's worth, so Q simply refrains from doing this and makes do with being spiteful instead. Then again, it did look like she was readying to counter any attempt for him to relocate her from the Enterprise, but who knows if this was a bluff on her part, so perhaps she did have, or is holding on to, some vestige of Q power. Honestly, I like a lot of these theories as much as I enjoy the idea of officers on the Enterprise trying to guess Guinan's past over drinks in 10 forward. That would have totally happened. I enjoy the mystery it brings, and I'm in two minds if I'd ever want to see this answered, because the fan discussion around this 30+ year mystery is brilliant. Let me know what ideas you have, because I'm honestly leaning onto the Nexus consciousness idea, mixed with her being too vital to history for Q to eliminate safely. Thanks for watching this video on Guinan and Q, and I hope to see you next time for another lore, theory or gameplay video. Thanks again, I've been Rick, and goodbye.